Hi, this is Peggy from Borrowell. So today our guest is Andrew Graham, the CEO and co-founder of Borrowell, a very well-known fintech in Canada. So Borrowell provides free credit score and report to over 1 million Canadians, as well as tools to manage and improve credit. So thank you so much for being with us today, Andrew.
My pleasure, Peggy. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. So let's get started right away. So from your perspective, what will be the long-lasting impacts of COVID in the financial services industry?
Well, I think there's going to be many impacts more broadly in the economy. I think specifically in financial services, we're seeing an acceleration of trends that were happening already. I think in particular the move to digital and a move away from having to go into branches and do things like wet signatures to doing much more digitally. It's been interesting to see even the example of having to physically sign documents. Many financial institutions have, over the course of the last few months, reversed a position whereby they used to make you sign certain documents in person to now saying electronic signatures are fine. So I think that acceleration to digital we're certainly seeing.
So thinking about regulations, you mentioned wet signature, some things as well were accepted, in the last few months that were not accepted in the past to accommodate for COVID. Do you see new regulations coming in the next few months or in the next year following the crisis?
Yeah, I think, I think it's about sort of an acceleration of current trends. So in the last few years, some financial institutions have done things like created the possibility of opening new accounts remotely and digitally. So we see some institutions doing that, but some of the older, more maybe less digitally savvy institutions haven't allowed that. And I think regulators there's been some wariness. Well, I think all of that trend towards allowing people to open accounts remotely and digitally, that is essentially has become table stakes. You've got to be able to let clients do that, or you're not going to be onboarding many clients in the next few months, certainly. So I think regulators recognize that. I think established financial institutions recognize that, and so that move that was sort of happening already, a bit slowly, a bit in sort of stops and starts, has now been really accelerated. And you can't not allow institutions to onboard customers digitally now, because that's of course how we're all living.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to ask you about open banking very quickly. Very often when I interview Canadian, open banking is the first topic that comes to mind when I speak about regulations, because as you know, it has been delayed. Any insight or any perspective on that from what you see?
Yeah, I think it has been delayed. We were told that the next phase of the consultations around open banking are now going to not start, or they're going to be delayed until the fall. Canada's already quite behind in open banking. We're still at the stage of trying to figure out what our approach is going to be as a country. And I think that's a lost opportunity, because as part of the move to being more digital and having digital access to financial services, many consumers want the ability to have more choice and be able to really have portability with their data. And we need open banking to be able to do that in a robust and reliable way. What's happening now is you have millions of people in this country, in Canada, who are using screen scraping, which is really not the best option. I mean, it's what many companies, including ours, it's what we have to do because there is an absence of open banking regulations. But where we all want to get to is a robust open banking framework where there's clear permissioning of data, so that consumers can really have a lot more choice, and small businesses for that matter. So it's certainly a concern to me that it's been delayed. I mean, speaking to people in and around the file in government, it sounds like there's still a lot of will to move it forward, and that's great. And I think we should be moving that forward as quickly as we can. And certainly I know many companies like ours are keen to sort of help and be supportive.
Okay, thank you very much for that view. If I look at the global financial order and obviously all the changes that have happened in terms of debt, in terms of relationship between countries, protectionism, all that great stuff, where do you see the global order going post-COVID?
Well, there's certainly it's certainly been a remarkable time for debt in many forms. You've seen governments around the world borrowing, 10+% of GDP, and running, deficits that have not been seen since the Second World War. By some measures, in some countries, even larger than what deficits that were run up in the Second World War relative to economic size. So staggering levels of public sector debt. Also interesting, in past crises, many companies have delevered, have paid down debts. Well, we're kind of seeing the opposite. There's been an accumulation or an increase in many cases of private sector debt. So the overall stock of debt in many forms seems to be increasing as a result of this. I think many smart commentators have sort of said that's not going to lead to an immediate rise in inflation, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But I think the indebtedness on its own is certainly something that countries and companies have to take as part of the new reality. So far, government supports have meant that at least in Canada and the U.S., there hasn't been the same run up in household debt, because there has been a lot of sort of support out there in the form of income support. But as we get into the next phase, we'll have to see what happens. I think from a geopolitical standpoint, it's still a bit early to see, but I think for governments that have been that already tended towards nationalism, that trend seems to be accelerating. If you look at the United States and the tendency amongst the president and others to call this sort of like the China flu or the China virus, there's been more of those kinds of things happening, I think. It's a challenge for governments everywhere. This is a real challenge to states in the rich world, in the emerging world, who are really having to confront a series of at once what's both an economic challenge and a health challenge. Mm-hmm. And being able to respond to those two challenges effectively is very, very, very hard. And so that's going to have implications in terms of trust of government and trust of experts and on lots of other factors like inequality and poverty as well that we could talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about your position or the position of Borrowell, and in terms of resetting the competitive positioning in the financial services industry, I think that's the upside of every crisis, is that challenger can actually hopefully benefit from that. Where do you see the competitive positioning going in financial services?
Well, I think this is an opportunity for digital first companies really across the economy to do well. We've seen already that retail is going in that direction. When you look at how much retail has shifted from in-person to e-commerce in just the past few months, really dramatic. And in financial services, I think we're seeing that as well. Obviously, you have bank branches across the world that are closed. So many services that used to be done in person are moving digital out of necessity. And I think for a company like ours that is digital first and that is used to delivering advice and services to consumers digitally, there's a huge opportunity to sort of say we can do more of that. And I think, unfortunately, many more consumers are feeling pressure around their finances because of what's happened with COVID. We've done a number of surveys of our members and have heard again and again that there is a very high level of concern and worry about personal finances these days. We're in the business of helping consumers navigate those kinds of challenges. So there's going to be many, many more people who are looking for help with their finances, and I think Borrowell is very well placed to be able to respond to those people and really try to help people navigate the next phase of this challenge, especially economically.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And in terms of incumbents, where do you see their transformation going? I know the trends have been accelerating, a bit more digital. Any insights on where you see this transformation going?
I mean, I think the importance of having really strong digital channels, if you are any sort of consumer-facing or small business-facing financial institution, you've got to have a great app. You've got to have strong digital channels. You've got to have the ability for your employees to work remotely and interact with customers remotely. that all becomes sort of like, table stakes. So I think, a lot of that was happening already. I think a big theme in a lot of what we talk about isn't so much brand new things happening, it's the acceleration of existing trends.
Yeah.
And so that move to digital amongst established financial institutions is, I think, being accelerated out of force and necessity.
So do you see more potential strategic partnership then in that context? Because it's difficult for them to develop everything internally in such a short period of time. Is it where you're thinking as well in terms of acceleration?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly, we're seeing that happening in other countries. So for example, in the US, where aid to small business delivered through the Paycheck Protection Program really allowed for banks to use technology companies to help deliver that. One of the banks that's I know originated a lot of loans is Cross River Bank, which is a bank that's used by many fintech companies in the US to deliver services. And we've seen US banks partner with technology companies really to deliver that kind of support. And I think that's a great example of how policy can help and accelerate the move towards partnerships. I mean, we haven't seen that to the same degree in Canada. So far, the support programs for small business have really been to the exclusion of technology and fintech companies, unfortunately. But I'm hopeful that that will change as we continue in this in this crisis and these challenges.
Thank you. And the last question. So, what are the good habits that maybe you developed during the crisis while being at home, or anything that made you a new Andrew for the new normal?
Well, you know what? Maybe I'm showing my age, but I actually miss being in the office, and I'm actually back in the office for one of the first times today. There aren't many people here, but there's a few of us here, and it's nice to get a change from my home. Look, I think working from home has actually, I think, gone much better for us as a company than we would have thought. And I think for myself as an individual, being able to spend more time with my family and being able to sort of shift that commute time into exercise or whatever it is has been positive. But on the other hand, there's something that's irreplaceable about that in-person contact, at least from time to time. So I think we really see our future as at Borrowell as being a combination of remote and in person, when necessary and as it's safe to do so. I think for myself personally, that's what I want to do. I certainly don't see myself shifting to being at home all the time, but different people are going to have different answers for that. I wish I'd a more inspiring or a great answer in terms of the question of the new Andrew.
Well,
I have
spending time with your family, it's inspiring,
so we'll see.
Well, it's something we hear a lot, the value of shifting the time away from the commute to something more valuable, like exercise or seeing the family. At the same time, many people, I'm sure it's your case as well, thought that they have very long hours now, and you need that discipline to not jump on your computer the first thing in the morning, and
that's right.
But the last thing, I know it's silly to say you need discipline not to work. I'm not sure I would have this conversation with French people, but in North America, that's definitely the discipline we seem to be needed. So I'm glad that you're able to use that time intelligently and spend it with your family and maybe taking care of yourself.
Yeah, well, we're all figuring out the new reality.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for taking the time to chat with me today. It's always a pleasure, obviously, and looking forward to speaking to you again, maybe on another topic at some point in 2021.
That would be great to chat, Peggy, and look forward to chatting again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Andrew.
Bye-bye.